educator growth from implementation of the IPG. One thing that I do want to make a note of that you guys have probably all gotten used to with all the sessions we've had, I'm sure you're all familiar that typically at the end of today, I usually send out an email that has a link to the course and just kind of like a summary of, if there's any changes or anything, as well as a reminder for those about the sessions that are coming tomorrow. I'm actually not going to send the link to the course in an email until Wednesday. And that's only because there's parts of this course that I want to make sure that I cover with you guys specifically, because there's a chain, like there's going to be a different option for one section of it that if you wish to use, you'll be permitted. And so I didn't want to cause any confusion about that. And so I really just wanted to cover it first with everybody before I send it out. Now, having said that, what I will do is at the end, before I turn it over to Q&A, I will actually put a link to the course in the chat. And so you can go ahead and click on it instead of having to wait for that email on Wednesday, and just go ahead and enroll so that you have access to it. So quarter four will go from today, February 24th to May 4th. So everything in quarter four's course 4 will need to be done by May 4th, by end of day, May 4th. The primary focus is instructional reflections observed after completion of a second IPG walkthrough. Just as always, this course is going to be in the Teach All system, just like all the others. And obviously, on Wednesday, I will send an email or follow-up email on Wednesday to all of the enrollees in all of the regions with a link to that course. But again, so you can have access to it now, I will drop the link in the chat at the end before the Q&A. So while modules do not have to be completed until May 4th, I do have some recommendation dates for certain modules. And let me make this very clear. These are not due dates. I don't want you to think March 28th is a due date. I don't want you to think May 1st is a due date. They're just recommendations just to kind of making sure that you're getting everything done in a timely manner. I am going to be auditing those modules those days, but I don't want you to feel like if you don't have modules 1 and 2 done by the 28th, that I'm going to be sending you an email asking you why it hasn't been done. That's not the case. The only due date is that all modules 1 through 5, and this course will have 5 modules, not 4. All the modules have to be done by the end of day, May 4th. You will have to complete the modules in order, just like you have in the past. And so one thing that's going to be a big difference between what you did in course 3 and course 2 versus course 4, which you're going to be working on here. I'm sure you all remember that you had the section in the module where you had to kind of provide information based on the conversations you had with your co-observers from the learning walks. That's not going to be in this course, okay, because you did that in those previous ones. So that's one thing that is not going to be asked of. So, while it is recommended, from the meetings we had with the course specialists, that IPG walkthroughs be conducted in teams, there's not going to be a requirement that you have a co-observer that you have to have any kind of conversations with to report information into the Teach All system. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that. There's not going to be an actual section in the course in any of the modules this time that's going to ask you to provide any information that you may have with someone that you do a co-observation with, if you choose to have a co-observer this time. All right, so outline of course 4. Module 1 is the introduction module. Module 2 is the ELA IPG. Module 3 is the math IPG. Module 4 is the reflection section, and then module 5 is full course submission. And so module 1 provides a brief introduction, general information on requirements for the course. I'm sure you all are familiar with module 1s at this point. It's very simple. It's just going to ask you to verify that you attended the learning session that you're having today. Once you do that, you can obviously complete all of module 1 and then move on from there. I am going to pull an attendance record for this session like I have with all the other ones. If you are attending from a different core region, you don't need to tell me which one you're from. I now have it set up to where I can take care of that directly myself. But just know, before I let everybody sign off today, I am going to pull the attendance report just so that I have that reference point. Module 2. Okay, so I'm going to probably spend a little bit of time talking about this because there's one particular section that I need to detail a different option, if you will. So module 2 focuses on a second walkthrough with the ELA IPG. So I know you did your first one back in the fall in course 2. This is going to focus on a second walkthrough. Each module section is going to basically be tied to a different part of the IPG. I'm sure you're all familiar with that by now. Um, the final section of module 2 will just have some like reflections of your observation experience, but where I want to spend most of my conversation is the second bullet point up on the screen. So when the modules were built, they were built with the idea that you would complete a second walkthrough over the person, the educator that you did your first walkthrough with, okay? But I'm fully aware things happen. And maybe that educator is no longer at your building, or maybe something, happened and they're just, they're out that day or whatever happens. Something else that I'm aware of too is that I know all of you are at different stages in your professional careers. And so some of you maybe have had more time to implement your school culture than others. And so I didn't want to force you to have to go and actually observe someone a second time using the IPG if it might actually harm the culture that you're building. And so with that being said, the module is going to say you have to complete it over the same educator, but you can, if you choose, actually to complete the IPG over a different educator in your building. And so that's kind of one of the big points that I wanted to make before I send out the links to everybody. Is it's going to say in the module you need to complete it over the educator that you did the first time around. But you do not have to do that. If you think it's in the best interest of your school or there's an issue and that educator is not available to you, you can complete the walkthrough over a different educator. Now, having said that, that is going to potentially cause some confusion in module 4. And so I have an easy solution if you decide to go with option 2. So we're going to say option 1 is completing the modules or completing the walkthrough over the same educator you did back in the fall with the ELA IPG, or option 2 is to complete a walkthrough over a different educator in your building using the IPG. Okay, and we'll talk about option 2 specifically and how you can indicate that in the module for me. But before we get to like that part of it, I want to go ahead and note that in module 3, it is the math IPG where you'll be recording the information from that walkthrough. So this will be the second walkthrough that you do with a math IPG that you'll record in the Teach All system. Because obviously you did the math IPG specifically with the core specialists in the last quarter. And so the same thing is true here. It's going to say that it's built out to where you would complete it over the same educator you did earlier in the semester, but that is not the case. You do not have to do that. You can complete a walkthrough over a different educator using the IPG in your building if you deem that that is what's best in the best interest, or if that educator is unavailable to you. And so again, I will detail what you would do in the module itself here and momentarily for module 4, because there's a certain particular section of it that it's very specific to if you actually did it over the same educator. But don't worry, we're going to talk about that here momentarily. But again, you have an option 1 for the math IPG, just like you do ELA, where you do it over the same educator you did last time, or you can go with option 2, where you complete the IPG walkthrough over a completely different educator in your building. All right, so module 4. So this is where, in terms of the actual logistics, where some things would have to be changed. As I'm going through this, I'm going to operate as if you chose option 1. And then once I get through this part, I will then show you what you would need to do if you choose option 2, where you decide to complete the IPG walkthrough with a different educator. So this module provides an opportunity for reflection regarding your experience with implementing the ELA and math IPGs. Specifically, it's going to ask you a question or two about, what improvements or what growth did you see from the feedback that you provided with the educator the first time from the original IPG versus now. One thing that if you have any issues with, like, because especially with the ELA IPG, that one was all the way back in October, back in the fall, you should still have access to course 2 and course 3. You just can't submit anything, but you should have access to see what you put in those previous courses so that you can kind of reference, what you saw before versus what you saw this time. Now, with that being said, that's if you would go the option 1, where you would complete it over the same educator. If you decide to go the route of option 2, where you complete this walkthrough with a different educator, I'm going to now pull up actually module 4 on my screen so that you guys can see it. And I'm going to detail specifically what I would want you to do if that is the route you go option 2 instead. So let me stop sharing this section and let me pull up this. Okay, I hope you all can see my screen now again. I've got module 4.2 pulled up because this is technically module 4.2 is over the ELA IPG reflection part, and then module 4.3 is over the math IPG reflection part. And so where you'll see that you might potentially have an issue if you go the route of option 2, where you complete the walkthrough over with a different educator, then would be this first question right here, right? Because it's asking you specifically like what you saw with the feedback, any changes that you saw. Well, obviously, if you do this over a different educator, you wouldn't be able to answer this question this way. So here is what I would like for you to do if you choose to go to route of option 2. And just so you know, everything I'm saying right here, right now, I'm going to put as a reminder in the email I will send out to all the enrollees on Wednesday. So don't think you have to remember this right now. I just wanted to put all this information out there. But the first thing you would do if you go the route of option 2 and you complete the walkthrough of a different educator, you would need to indicate that in your answer response. So all I would ask is that you start it with option 2. And then instead of answering this question that you see on the screen, what I would like for you to do is to think back or look at what you saw in your first observation with the original educator, and then I want you to compare it to what you saw in this walkthrough. So what were some instructional strategies? What did you see that was similar or different in terms of the two different educators? And so that's really what I would like for you to do if in this particular question number 1 on module 4.2, if you choose to actually go the route of completing it over a different educator. Now, the good news is it doesn't matter if you go option 1 or option 2, you can answer question 2 either way. That one's fine. And then you will also do the same for module 4.3. 4.3 will be with the math IPG. So if you go with option 2 for the math IPG, you would just need to indicate that in the answer and then answer that same question, comparing what did you see in that original walkthrough with the first educator versus the second walkthrough with this different educator, any similarities or differences you saw in the instruction, and any feedback you think you could provide either educator based on what you saw observing a different classroom, a different educator. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on that as much as I possibly can. Again, I will send all of this to you as a reminder on Wednesday. And so, like I said, I just wanted to make sure that I cover this with everybody before I send this information out, because I don't want to cause any confusion for the people that aren't having their sessions till tomorrow or Wednesday. So that's why the email about this, and then obviously another link to the course, won't be sent out till Wednesday. All right, with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to go back. All right. And so I'm going to pull back where we left off. All right, so that's module 4. Module 5, when you get to module 5, that is the final submission module. All it's basically going to do is ask you to verify that you've completed all of the modules so far, courses 1 through 4. There is going to be another little section on module 5 that we'll talk about here in just a second that I will need you to complete as well. But once you have submitted all the modules and you hit that submit button on module number 5, then you have completed everything that you need to do for the TASL Academy, because this will mark the final completion in conjunction with, obviously, that you've already done course 3, course 2, and course 1. It will generate the certificate of completion once you hit that submit button on the last section of module 5. You'll just do what you have been doing, where you'll take that certificate and you'll upload it under your attachment section in your T-Encompass account. Okay. Now, what you see here on the screen, there's actually a slight change too. So what you originally see about the feedback survey is that you were going to receive an email in April with a link to the survey. That is not the case. What I have done is, instead of sending it to you in an email at a later date, I've actually embedded the survey into module 5 itself. Okay, so once you get into module 5, you have access to the survey. Now, I have to be fully transparent here, because I know that a potential issue could arise, and that is, technically you can complete all of module 5 and not actually have done the survey because the survey is a link in the module. And so if that happens, obviously number one, until May 4th, or excuse me, till it closes on May 4th, until that date, you can always go back in to click on the feedback survey and complete it that way. But once the the course actually closes, it's possible it may not give you access to that link anymore. And you'll notice that the survey is going to remain open till May 16th. If for some reason something happens and you aren't able to access the survey or there's an issue, all you have to do is email me or email the TASL inbox, and I will send you a direct link to the survey. So I want you to know that it is in the actual module. It's there for you to access it right away at the very end. But if something happens and you need to get a different access point, you can just ask me and we'll get it taken care of, I promise. I'm going to go ahead and show it to you just so that you can see it here. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen again. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen again now. This is going to be Module 5. It's specifically Module 5.1. It's right here. It says, please take the end of course survey. So it's right there. You'll just click on that. But technically, you could move past this if you just hit the yes button on that you completed all the previous modules. But just for your own benefit, I would recommend that you go ahead and do the survey once you get to that point. The survey only takes a couple of minutes. It's not going to ask for you to provide a lot of information. The survey serves two purposes, so you do need to make sure you do it. Purpose number one, obviously, for me, provides me with valuable feedback for people that'll be coming into the administrator academies in the future. So things that I want to look at, what people have to say about potential changes that I may need to make going forward. But for you, what's important is once you have completed the survey, that in conjunction with those certificates allow me to build out the system to upload your TASL credits and your TASL banner into T Encompass. So that's why it's really important for you to do the survey, is because it makes it to where I can actually import those. Now, let me make sure I am clear on this. When you complete all of Module 5, when you complete all of Course 4 and done this survey, it is not going to generate your TASL credits and your banner immediately, okay? That has to be done by me, and I can't do that until after we have finished with everything in May. And so, but just know that for everything that you are required to do, it is done when you have finished everything in the module, and then it'll basically be turned over to me. Just as a reminder, not only will you get the TASL completion banner in your T Encompass account, that'll be added by me, but you'll also get 14 TASL credits for completing the initial academy. So just as a reminder about that information as well. But anyways, I just wanted to show this to you just so that you could see it, see where it's at. And now we're going to go back to the presentation. Okay. So end of course 4, again, course 4 will close on May 4th at 11:59 p.m. So right before it turns over to May 5th. There are going to be, again, 2 rounds of office hour sessions. And you'll notice that they're both in the month of March. I didn't do one in the month of March and the one in the month of April. And I'll go ahead and tell you why. Number one, I did 2 sessions because I know in the month of March, that's when people's spring breaks are typically going on. And as you are all aware, you do not have to attend office hours. It's just an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have to me. But if you have a question and you wanted to attend and you saw it was on your spring break, I didn't want to take that time away from you. So I wanted to try to protect that time. So that's why I offered it twice. Another thing is I didn't want to put any office hours or a virtual session in the month of April because I know at the building level, at the district level, that's when you got all the testing stuff kind of gearing up. And so I didn't want to interfere with having meetings during the month of April. And so those 2 rounds, March 10th and 11th and March 24th and 25th are the rounds of the office hour sessions. They will be 1 hour in length. Again, you don't have to attend. It's just if you have any questions that you want to ask me at that point. You can also obviously send any questions you have to the TASL inbox. I know many people have used that option instead of necessarily coming to the office hours, and I try to respond back as quickly as I possibly can. Um, And as always, the session links will be sent out to you via email. So like I've done in the past, you'll get a link to not only your Grand Region's office hours, but to all of them, just in case you want to attend one of the different ones. It's perfectly fine. Um, and then last but not least, in terms of office hours or virtual sessions, there is going to be a virtual session that you will need to attend in May. And so it's the last session. It's kind of our wrap up session where we close everything out. It'll be towards the beginning of May. I think for y'all, it'll be May 5th, I believe, but I'd have to double check the calendar. And specifically, we're going to be covering how to advance an ILL to an ILLP. So if you don't have an ILLP, I'm going to be covering that information. I'll be talking about specifically how the advancement process works. Um, I'm also going to detail, all the requirements for advancement. So the truth is the TASL Academy is not the only requirement to advance the ILL to the ILLP. And so I'm going to kind of talk to you about exactly what are all the requirements you need to make sure you meet before you can advance the license. And so I do expect, that one will be very beneficial for all of you. And then last but not least, I will be providing a guidance document as well as a recorded video of me kind of going through the transaction just so that you can see all that information at how it actually work. So what you see on the screen here is just kind of a timeline of Q4 dates. I just kind of wanted to simplify it down. Again, I'll kind of go through each one of these. So obviously Q4, Course 4 opens today on February 24th. Office hour rounds, you have March 10th and the 11th, and then March 24th and 25th. Now the next two dates, I have them on here. These are not due dates, but March 28th is just my recommendation for having modules 1 and 2 done. Like I said, I will do an audit just to kind of see where everybody's at, but I'm not going to be reaching out about that. And then modules 3, 4, and 5, I recommend by May 1st. I'll be honest with you, the reason why I recommend it being done a few days before the actual close date is just because if something happens, if we have a few extra days before it closes, we can get it taken care of. So, but then what you need to be aware of is the due date of everything is March 4th by end of day. So that's just a little timeline. And also, on Wednesday when I send out the email, kind of going through all this as a reminder, I will send this PowerPoint out as also just so that you have this information available to you. All right, and so before I turn it over to any questions that you may have, the first thing I want to detail is, if you ever have questions after this session, you can always email the TASL inbox. You'll getting responses. When you get them, you'll get them from me. I always request that you have, give me about 48 hours, but I try to get it back to you as soon as possible. The next thing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to stop the recording real quick.